Hi Stampers, this is Debbie Henderson from Debbie's Designs. Today's project I'm going to show you how to create this double paned window with the Hearth Home Framelits dies. We're actually going to be making a different card, but I wanted to show you what I used for the background paper in case you want to duplicate this one. I used the designer paper from Into the Woods. As you can see, it has some beautiful patterns, even has the wood grain, beautiful flowers. But I use this pattern for the background behind the window pane. And then I used the Home for Christmas designer paper, and I used this deer image. I actually cut out two of them. You get 2 pages, and of course there's a beautiful holly pattern on the background on the reverse side. But I cut out 2 of these deer by hand and used them peeking through the window. And I've also seen cards on Pinterest using the Santa Claus peeking out the window. So you could actually use either one. The Hearth Home Thinlits dies comes in 2 pieces. You have the little shelf or flower box and then the window itself. And it coordinates with the Happy Scenes stamp set, where you can use different stamp images for different holiday seasons. I'm going to show you another stamp set that it coordinates with that we're not using today, the Festive Fireplace stamp set, and it cuts this portion with the same Thinlits dies. So let me give you a list of what else we're going to be using today. For inks, we're going to be using So Saffron, Soft Sky, and Soft Suede. We're also going to need sponge daubers for the Soft Suede and the So Saffron, the 1-inch circle punch, and another framelit that we're going to use today is this one, which comes from the Project Life Cards and Labels framelits. It's got the different sizes here that you can use for your Project Life photos, but we're going to be using this one for the sentiment today. I'm also going to bring in stamping sponge for the Soft Sky ink pad. We're going to need stamping dimensionals. And for stamps, we're going to be using the tree image from Lovely as a Tree. This is one of the oldest Stampin' Up stamp sets. It's been around forever, and it's one of our most popular stamp sets. And the sentiment we're going to be using is from A Dozen Thoughts, and we're using the You're in My Thoughts. For cardstock, we're going to be using Pumpkin Pie 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4 at the center and folded. So Saffron 5 1/4 by 4 inches. Soft Suede 3 3/4 by 5.5 inches. Into the Woods designer paper that I showed you at the beginning of the video, and we're using the wood grain background, 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Whisper White 4 3/4 inches by 3 inches. A scrap piece of Whisper White, and I've used the 1-inch punch to punch a hole in the middle. We're going to be using this as a stencil. And I used Whisper White to cut out this one so we could save time by cutting it in advance. And you're also going to need your Big Shot machine. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is bring in our Big Shot machine. And we're going to be using the Soft Suede cardstock. I'm going to lay this down. And I'm also using the magnetic plate. So we're going to place our Hearth Home Thinlits die. And you're going to use the clear, let me move this around, the clear cutting pad, and you're going to put it on your window die and make sure that it's lined up so that some of the die sticks out. And what we're actually trying to do, I'm going to flip this over to explain, this is the cutting part on the edge that we don't want to cut. So by putting this down where you want it on your cardstock and adding your cutting plate beyond that cutting edge, you're not going to cut this edge. So let's put this through the Big Shot. I'm going to bring this over and show you. See, it's only cut around the whole frame, but not on this edge. So now we're going to turn it around. Let me pop these out. We're going to turn it around the opposite side, and you're going to add your frame back in, and you're going to overlap and you see where there's just a little bit sticking out, but you have to make sure that it's centered correctly so that the lines will match up on either side. And we're going to do the same thing. You're going to add your cutting plate and make sure that the edge is sticking out from underneath, because you don't want to cut that center portion. Now let me remove my Big Shot machine. Now, depending on where you ended up overlapping, you might end up having to cut the center where they meet. As you can see, I didn't quite cut that perfectly. So all I'm going to do is follow the line. And there's your double paned window frame. And the rectangles that you cut out from the die itself would make a pretty card too. I haven't quite had time to play with that, but I'm saving all my little rectangles because they're so perfect. Now let's move on to our stamping. And we're going to bring in the soft suede ink pad and the lovely as a tree images. Now remember, when you're stamping on the piece that goes behind the window, to envision that part of the edge is going to be covered by the window frame. So if you're like when we did the deer, you have to make sure that they're sticking out enough to peek through the window. So we'll stamp our trees. And now I'm going to bring in the scrap paper where I use the 1-inch circle punch to punch a hole. I'm going to lay this over one of the trees. And I'm going to bring in my So Saffron ink. And then I'm just going to sponge the sun. And I'll add more color on the edges. Okay, simple. I'm also going to, because it's fall time and my card has fall colors in it, I'm going to use the soft suede ink just to add a little bit of brown, because the grass is now brown in Maine. Means winter's coming, which I hate. Okay, so we're just going to add brown to the grass. And then we're going to bring in our stamping sponge to do the sky with the soft sky ink. I like using this type of sponge when I'm sponging a larger area. It just seems to work better, and the results are a lot smoother. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let me put the ink pad away. And now I'm going to bring in my Tombow glue. And I'm just going to add glue to the very edge of all 4 sides. And then I'm going to take my window and press it in place. So we now have the outdoor scene that we just created. I'm going to stamp the sentiment with the soft suede ink, so I'll bring in my Project Life shape. And we'll center that. Now all that's left is to assemble our card. So I'm going to bring in pumpkin pie and fold it with my bone folder. So saffron will be layer number 2. And then we're going to bring in our designer paper with the wood grain pattern, which is layer number 3. And for the window, I'm actually going to use Stampin' Dimensionals. I like the way the windows look when they're raised with the dimensionals. Now that I've removed all the backing, I will place my window in place. Right there. And we're going to glue the sentiment down with dimensionals also. And there's my card for today. And I'll bring in the other one, and I'll have pictures of both cards at the beginning and at the end of the video so you can see them all. I will have a lot of pictures on my blog this week with different window die cards. We're getting ready for our fall mini session at Create with Connie and Mary, and that's one of the stamp sets I'll be featuring that coordinate with the window die. If you have any questions, make sure you leave me a comment on YouTube, or you can email me. I'll have all my information at the end of the video. Thanks so much for stopping by.